Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.
Welcome back. I'm Karen Cunningham, special education boss, helping families and individuals that sit at the 504 IEP table navigate and negotiate successful student outcomes. We are in a series, Parents, Procedural Rights, Procedural Safeguards under the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's interesting that the government wrote these about parents' rights. Notice they weren't protecting the rights of escuela, which is Spanish for school. It's important that you know what they are. We pretty much established last week that all of you, when you're in IEP meetings, the school district goes over them at length and reads them to you word for word in your county or your school district. But just in case that somebody in the future is watching them, they are not as blessed as you are. I read over two of them, and the right to an IEE and then a PWN. I had somebody the other night, she said she was mad I was using acronyms. It's international law if you're going to be in special ed. Acronyms like ATP. We're going to talk about these are the explanation of specific procedural safeguards. So number one is the right to independent educational evaluations, and it's in the federal code 300.502. 300.502. That is the first procedural safeguard. That is the number. And so I think many people are often confused about what an IEE is, what an IEE isn't. Advocates are IEE happy. For those of you that train with me, alongside me, under me, or by me, please don't ever let me find out that you're one of those advocates because you look ridiculous. I rarely ask for an IEE for many components, and we'll go over them. I do ask for one sometimes when we greatly disagree with the conclusions, data, or summary, but an IEE is delivered to a parent when you disagree with the schools. You could have an evaluation from the Surgeon General, and it doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is that there is a legal responsibility that no matter what evaluation you bring from an outside entity, that they are charged with doing their own educational evaluations. I don't want parents going out and spending their money. Many of you have been my clients in the past, and you'll go and get an evaluation from a psychiatrist, a licensed professional counselor. The instruments that they use in their practices are different than educational instruments. They're valid instruments, the setting we use them in. And so while they're not invalid, a diagnostician or an LSSP, a licensed specialist in school psychology, or an LPC, depending on where you live in the States, they don't use those instruments. Often I will have amazing physicians or persons in the professional community, and they'll be using an evaluation, and it's expired. It's not normed and standardized anymore. Every so often we change those components of an assessment. Like right now we have the WJ4, that means we used to have the WJ3. And there's lovely reading institutes around here who I love, and they use an expired instrument and they say it's expired. That's not going to bode well in the school district. It's all thrown out. It doesn't matter if you like that component of the assessment, they're not going to accept it. And so I want my parents to expense their time and money and energy and their cherub getting tested to make sure that if they're going to bring an assessment to the school, that it's valid. Those are the instruments that they would use to have the school look at an educational impact. And so as you go out and advocate for people, or if you're giving directions to persons at your school, I know that school-based members would never tell a parent to go get an evaluation first and then come back, and then we'll start our RTM. I know you would never do that. It's the onus, child fine is the onus of the public school district, the place that receives federal assistance and federal funds. We just want you to be cautious when you are advocating for somebody or the school district telling somebody to go get an outside evaluation. Because at the end of the day, they have to do their own evaluation. So you get an evaluation back, you get a reevaluation back, you get an initial evaluation back, and you agree with it. I don't think I've ever disagreed with the whole evaluation. It might have felt like it, but I don't think I've ever disagreed with all 8 sections. Sometimes I disagree with it not being robust. I disagree with it being informal and not formal. I disagree that they didn't dig a little bit deeper with the parents. I disagree that the student has ADHD and you didn't provide the parent an OHI form. So usually I disagree with sections of it or a section. And so we let those persons read their entire evaluation, ask us if we have any questions. Those of you that know me, I always go, not at this time, not at this time. And Glenda's got that down really good. Not at this time. What that means is I'm going to come back to that. I see you guys do that in IEP meetings and ARD meetings because you want to get to the goals or you want to get to the services. Don't agree to something that you didn't disagree with. And so even as it relates to an IEP document, people are like, oh, do you agree with these goals? Because if you don't agree with these goals, we can't move forward. Nowhere can we not move forward in an IDEA. So sometimes I'll say, I heard the goals that you reviewed. I'd like to come back to them. I'm not able to make a decision yet. So same thing as it relates to an FIE. You also could have an FIE that was delivered to you in evaluation or reevaluation, and they have summary and conclusions. But legally, the IEP team is charged with making final determinations. So the evaluation says you meet criteria, and then the IEP team is charged with, do we accept those considerations? There's no requirement that you accept every consideration, believe me, or that you accept every new eligibility. So you get an evaluation, you disagree with it, your child is nonverbal, the school says your child doesn't have a speech impairment. Let's just go with that. I know none of y'all would ever have anything like that happen to you. So you would ask for an IE, an independent education evaluation. So wherever you live, your district or your county, when you reach out to the executive director of special education or whoever it is in your district or county, you would say, hey, this is Cindy Smith. I'm requesting an IEE for my student, Billy. I disagree with the evaluation. These are the parts that I disagree with. And then the school district will either grant your request, remember those 2 words we use in special ed, grant or deny. Somebody should name their kids that, grant and deny. That'd be a good name for twins. Anyway, so they either grant that or deny it. And so there's very specifics around that granting and denying. And so I'll read those to you. If a parent requests an IE, the district may ask for the parent's reason for objecting to its evaluation. So let's just park there for a second. There are some lovely advocates that just say, I'm not going to tell you. I don't have to tell you, like in the meeting. I'm not going to tell you. You're right. You don't have to tell me, but it's called collaborating. So if Tim's the diagnostician, he said, what part of the achievement don't you agree with? I don't have to tell you. Okay. You don't have to tell them. You could simply say, I disagree with the conclusion that summary. I do believe that there's an eligibility there. You didn't determine, but you don't say, I don't have to tell you, because that is true. You don't have to tell them. But the more you work with people, the more they work with you back. And if you're going to advocate, especially for a living, you'll be working with those people again. Certainly give them information around that. You don't have to tell them, I disagree with line 12 and page 4. I don't like the evaluator and I don't like the sweater she wore. You don't need to do all of that, but you need to give them some reason. We're not just out here in districts granting money for IEEs. An IEE costs the district money. I don't believe in expensing the district $15, $16, $2,000, $100, $2,000, whatever it is in your district, just to have evaluations. There are many advocates that do that, and I think that is awful. When they ask you that, you can give them the answer as much as you know. Eventually, it says, however, it may not require the parent to provide an explanation and may not unreasonably delay either providing the IE public expense or filing a due process complaint to request a due process hearing to defend the evaluation. And most people don't know this. When you request an IE, they're going to either grant it or deny it. I've had very few denied. I had an IE denied because the parents had never done an evaluation, but they didn't tell me that. They were like, we disagree with school not putting him in special ed. You have an evaluation yet? No. Okay, well, then you can't disagree with the evaluation that didn't happen. They just disagreed that he wasn't in special ed. That was one time. But there have been times, and you'll come across it, where if the school denies the IEE they have to file due process on you. And while this may be a little bit shocking, they're going to file due process on your child. So you're going to get some paperwork saying, hey, big bad independent school district, or make it up as we go, wherever y'all live, filing due process against Nolan. And when you're a parent, that's a little bit much when you get the big attorney letter and all of that. All that simply means is that both parties must come before a hearing officer and explain their position. So you can imagine a school district having a full due process hearing and explaining while their assessment was fantastic, because that initial letter that the attorney is going to send to the district or the parent probably costs them $1,500, period. And all that means is that they would have to prove to the hearing officer why they're not going to give you an IE. I think parents think of due process as I'm being sued by the school, I'm suing the school. You're not suing the school. Sounds good, but you're not. You're asking for your legal position, your allegations as it relates to violations of IDEA to be heard before an impartial due process hearing officer. Keyword, impartial. That is a possibility, and that is under CFR 300-502B4. Under that, if a parent requests an IE at public expense, the public agency must, without unnecessary delay. And so those are the two keywords that you need to remember. Those are three. Without unnecessary delay. Without unnecessary delay. That's sort of like consider. We have all these words in the law that have no time frame, right? I would assume, I'm an assumer, 10 business days would be without unnecessary delay. But again, if they go 13 days, nobody's going to get in trouble. And then they have to ensure that an IE is provided at public expense, meaning the school district is going to pay for the IE, unless the agency demonstrates in a due process hearing that the evaluation obtained by the parent did not meet agency criteria. So when the school district grants the IE, they're going to send you a list of providers. And so the school district or the county is going to provide you a list of providers. That doesn't mean you can't get another provider. I think I had a school district one time provide a list of 2 people. I think they were their cousins. I don't know. I was like, is that all you got? So you can certainly use somebody else. They will have to meet the district or the county's requirements to do those evaluations. Same requirements. So let's say that Julianne is an IE provider. Her requirements to do that evaluation, that assessment, are not unlike or different than it would be to work in the school district and be an LSSP or a diagnostician. So I have clients that they're both doctors and they're not able to do IEEs because they're not licensed professionals in school psychology. So you have to have very specific credentials to do that, or you have to be an educational diagnostician. So be aware of that. My friend Bobby Joe that works out at the docks, he's really good at knowing kids' feelings. Probably not going to be an evaluator. So just make sure that it's somebody that meets those same criteria. Additionally, you're going to want to make sure that it's somebody that's reputable, right? How long have you been doing IEEs? You can just throw your hat in wherever you throw your hat. Where do you throw your hat? In the circle? I don't know. Is there a lot of hat throwing? I don't know. You just, in the ring, that's where you throw your hat. You can throw your hat in the ring to be an IE provider. But when I look at a list for an IE provider, if I've never heard of them, we're not going to use them. What is their arena? Do they, just like advocates, do they happen to do IEs and they happen to have a counseling service and they happen to grow tomatoes for a living? You want somebody that specializes in that, because that's going to be your last option to have a consideration for a different outcome. So if you want somebody that's not on the school district's list or the county's list, then you would say, hey, I want Gail Evans, who is amazing. She's on everybody's list, to do the OT evaluation. If they're not on the list, they will have to apply with the county or the school district to be a vendor for them on that list. And then that's a whole chain of event, and they send that back and forth, and you have a fax machine, and that can really draw it out. It happens. The other thing you need to know is IEs are like being pregnant. It's a long time till the baby gets here, and you're going to have to wait, and you wait at the end of the line. They all take time to provide those instruments to the students. If in fact those also include observations, a good evaluator will do at least 3 evaluations. 1, 2, 3, which is different than 1 across different settings, right? And maybe not the day they're going on their end of the year field trip. So you want somebody that's reputable and going to do it with fidelity. And so we want to give them that time. Those things are important. You're going to have to provide your student to the IEE evaluator for some components of assessment. You're going to want to make sure that IEE provider is using instruments that the school didn't use. So you're going to have to provide those evaluations that you just had done by the school to the IEE provider. And of course, they'll automatically have consent because you didn't buy the IEE. The IEE was purchased by the school. It's not yours. So when the IEE is completed, whenever that is, it goes first to the school district. And then the school district gets to review it as quickly as they can. So there's no timeline on how long they've had it, how long they're going to chop it up. And then at some point, we'll have an IEP meeting to review the IEE. So you want to make sure that you understand all of those components. If I'm looking at an IE provider and you're new to the game or you don't know how this works, I would just call them and say, hey, Carmen, you were on this list. How many IEs do you do a year? I haven't done one, but I'm looking forward to it. Nice talking to you. This is not personal. It's what? Business. So this will be my first IE ever. Let somebody practice on some other kiddo. And then, of course, ask other parents. You can ask your school diagnostician, because I know you're going to get along with them. You can ask your school LSSP, who is an IE provider that this district uses often. That will give you good indications. There are some IE providers near where I live that will provide you an IEE that's about 6 pages long. And so just because they're used frequently by a school district does not mean that they're a good IE provider. There are some IE providers who don't give a recommendation at the end. They just default to a 504. And last but not least, the school district has no responsibility in adhering to, applying, or implementing a single recommendation in the IE. They have a legal onus, review it. Hopefully they review it with the parent, and we have an IEP meeting and we convene because it's a new evaluation. Sometimes you'll get into an IEP meeting and they'll go, let's just go right to the recommendations. It's 50 pages long. I know, but mom has a copy. Nope, we don't do that. We don't do that for the integrity of the recording. And since we're doing this as a team, one of the things that I ask often when it goes that way is, Tim, Amanda, Keith, and Aubrey, did you guys read the IE? Notice I didn't say, did you? We ask people questions that are not yes, no questions. Amanda, when did you read the whole IE? You know, Tim reads our IEs and we defer to him. So you weren't able to read it. And then you're quiet. What day did you receive it, Keitha? And most people have never seen a copy of it. We call that a problem, because even if we all agree with the great Tim, they didn't read it. We're still a convened IEP Tim. So that happens more times than not. The other thing that happens is that you have the diagnostician who said the student didn't have an SLD. The IE says he has 3, and they get their what hurt, their feelings. And they say this, we stand by original evaluation. And I always say, well, I would assume that you would. I wouldn't assume that you'd go, just kidding, right? That's why we ask for the IE, right? And so that's hard to negotiate. We stand by it. Okay, nobody, I don't know, we're all sitting, you could just sit by it. And that's sort of hard to move past because people take it personally. It's not personal. If you were at the doctor and you said you want another opinion, somebody would go, oh my God, you're doing that, right? Because everybody has a different opinion, even about the same data, especially as it relates to specific learning disabilities. I mean, that conversation will go on forever. I had a kiddo today, his evaluation, all of his numbers were above 110. I was like, if I was this smart, I would be like, honk, if you think you're as smart as I am. You're not. And then he had a little 76 in processing speed. And the mom said, do you think that affects his learning? I said, just when he's at school and awake. Yeah, he's in the 7th percentile of processing stuff. Yeah, it just affects what classes, all of them. Yeah, right? But they were all like, oh my gosh, look how smart he is. Okay, We don't use the word smart. We don't use the word attractive. We don't use the word bright. We don't use the word capable. We don't, we don't use those words, right? And so it was shocking what an outlier that was, but they were also excited about how smart he was. Okay. So you want to make sure that you have completely read the IE word for word for word for word. If you're the parent, if Martha's the parent and Cindy Smith came and did the IE, Martha can call her afterward and ask her questions about it. You can have the IEE provider, if you anticipate there's going to be a hiccup, join you on the call. Now, it's very unusual. IE providers are not usually good on the call. They're not good. And IEP meetings, it causes more division than not. But if I had a disagree and a reconvene, so when you have the IE meeting, we can certainly disagree and reconvene. Why are we reconvening? It's so that both parties can go back and get some more information. At that point, I've had the IE person who wasn't at the meeting because their evaluation was pristine and clear, and boom, I've had them write a summary letter back to the IEP committee. Because sometimes you'll be in a meeting and the school-based member will be reading the IEP, the independent education evaluation, and will put their own little spin on it. I'm like, that's not what she said. She said he has autism. No, she didn't. She did see where it says she has autism. That's clinical. So I've had IE providers add a summary email to clarify their recommendation. Certainly need that if you're going to file, but usually IE providers are not necessarily good communicators always to a group, and they're not used to defending. You want to really consider that. I might meet with IE provider ahead of time and, hey, Donna, got your evaluation. Thank you so much for working with my kiddo. Can you explain to me the sections? Because otherwise I'm going to go back to the IEP committee. I'm going to expect for them to explain to me their sections and their conclusions. And then she can tell you that, but you want to be fully prepared that 0 of it will be accepted. 0. Doesn't matter if you go to the greatest provider, they find 5 more eligibilities. The school has no requirement for accepting 1 recommendation of that evaluation. So that is an IEE. Again, the IEE provider has to obviously collaborate with the school district because they're going to set up observations. They're going to be providing those teachers forms to fill out, which we would like the teachers to fill them out. They fill them out. So there's sort of this dance that goes on with an IE. And I know parents get frustrated because they're having to wait, but it's worth waiting for because you want it done right. It can move into other school years. It can move into other campuses. It can move into other districts. So if I get an IE at Elm Independent School District and I'm moving to Shady Grove Independent School District, that IEE still follows you to the next location. What if you find out during the 30-day wait for the initial transfer ARD? Now, is this about the IE? I'm just kidding. For the initial transfer ARD to change where they adopt the CRUD from the IEP from the other district for something in place for your child on the first day. Accommodations were not provided and it caused emotional trauma, the PTSD from the child dealt with in the other district, all info coming from students stating did not have XYZ. Can the transfer ARD be moved forward and not wait 30 days after? Not. The transfer ARD is 30 days. And the reason for the transfer ARD is that the new school district is getting that student, they don't know them. And in that 30 days, they have a legal responsibility if they see there's a need, or even if you've already just had them done, they're charged with doing new evaluations. If you're in a nice school district, and we don't want to collaborate with parents and violates the requirements of IDEA ever, but you're in a good place. How often is an IE helpful if the school doesn't have to accept it? That's a really good question. I would say probably 50-50 if we use that. We'll just grant them. And it just means we have another meeting and another meeting and another meeting. So I'm not a fan of requesting them. I'm a fan of requesting it for the same reason. If it changes outcomes for a student, if it doesn't, then it doesn't. If the school accepts some of the IE, do they have to accept all of it? No, they could accept, we like their logo. So the IE will have updated considerations for 504, updated accommodations, possible updated supports as it relates to special ed time, updated eligibilities. And that's another thing. You could get an IE back and it bites you in the hind end. as you go and advocate for people, please let them know that. You might have a kiddo that they're saying, Janet, now your kiddo is AU, he's in junior high, now he's ED, which is a conversation we have. And then said evaluator goes, actually, he has an intellectual disability. I just had that happen. Well, y'all were fighting about AUED, and some stranger who doesn't know him because he's low verbal, he didn't like you, didn't answer your questions. He did meet eligibility for ID with her. And then the school's like, we'll take that. There's a saying, be careful when you put your hand in muddy water, you might get something you weren't betting on. So as you go and advocate for families, you have to tell them, our job is to tell them possible outcomes. And the longer you do this, you'll know what those possible outcomes, but those are things, if he met criteria for ID, I just had a kiddo, he met criteria for ID. I'm like, well, he's in 7th grade. He's in all general ed classes. We know that a kiddo with ID, and this is very vague, it's not legal, it's certainly not under the DSM-5 criteria, but an individual with an intellectual disability is about 5 to 7 years old, emotionally, cognitively. So I don't have 7th graders in gen ed who are ID that have never even been in resource. So, but based on the evaluation, he didn't meet the criteria. So you have to be careful. Everything in special ed always has meaningful benefit, harmful effect. So as much as you can mitigate that and give families all the information around that, that's best. There's a lot of loss in special ed. And so I can never tell my families all the loss that there might be, but your job as a professional, wherever you sit at the 504 IEP table, is to let parents know possible outcomes. One of the opening lines, I do not guarantee outcomes because I'm dealing with humans. Yeah, there's no guaranteeing outcomes. So people go through a lot. So you want to remember that. So we have to stop having conversations with schools and start having written information.
Okay.
So a lot of you do a lot of talking. Parents are really involved up there laminating. And we're just kicking it with the school. You're asking schools to spend federal funds on your chair rep. You might want to get that in writing. And then what happens is parents just go away. So if they said it, we can capture it in writing. Otherwise, they didn't said it. Just next time you talk to them, just say, I'm on to you. I talked to Karen, right? People don't know what they don't know. Schools are trained. Schools have trainings to not write anything down. And this is what I tell my family. And I don't care if your child's medically fragile. Sorry. If your school calls, this is what I tell families. If your child's on fire, they'll leave a message. And guess what you don't have happen? No messages. They'll call me. They keep calling. We just crouch down behind the couch. That's what they're trained to do. And then I get into a meeting. Oh, I talked to Heidi. I talked to mom. Well, Heidi's not allowed to talk to people anymore. I don't know why she talked to you. I'm going to work with that her on the weekend. Don't talk to people about a legal situation that you're not ready to make a decision. There's a great OSEP letter, 1991, letter to Sutler, Sutler, that talks about IEEs. It's an OSEP, Office of Special Education Programs, letter to Sutler. And if you don't know what that means, OSEP, you can ask them questions and they respond to your question. Remember, we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. We'll see you guys in the next training.
Hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change, we're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.